All right, today in class we talked about this article from the United Kingdom in which they talk about their use of business intelligence, how they use software created in the United States to crunch large amounts of data related to crime that happens in a number of areas there in the United Kingdom, and then they predict where things are going to be happening in the future. And they're seeing a lot of success with this. That I think they said something like they're 7 times more likely to be able to predict where things are going to happen than just a human being would predict on their own. And so they're saying this is a lot like the Minority Report. And if you remember in the textbook, it also talks about Richmond, Virginia, and the police department there doing something similar. The main topic of Chapter 7 is business intelligence. And like I said in class, business intelligence is kind of a term that's a newer term, an in vogue term for decision support systems. It's using things like spreadsheets and other more advanced types of software to crunch large amounts of data in order that a business can make a decision on what it's supposed to do. So if you had an upward trending line for sales, you might need to adjust by hiring on more staff. If you have a downward trending line in something, you might need to do, lay people off, shut down that line of business, and things of that nature. So here from this Wikipedia article, it has just a whole bunch of information. The ability to organize, collect, maintain, and organize knowledge. In the second paragraph, it includes things like online analytical processing, analytics, data mining, process mining, complex events processing, etc., text mining, predictive analytics. The goal of modern business intelligence deployments is to support better business decision making. Like I said before, it's a decision support system. Thus, a BI system can be called a decision support system. Um, it also says the term business intelligence is sometimes a synonym for competitive intelligence, but what the point they make here is that competitive intelligence oftentimes involves outside sources of data, whereas business intelligence usually refers to data that's inside of your organization that you use to make decisions with. This short little case study at the beginning of the chapter reminds me a little bit of some type of white paper that's associated with someone trying to sell a product, almost like something you would read from them when they're trying to get you to buy the software rather than teach you something in a book. Because they're saying that, hey, somebody used this software and they saved $15,000 during a shift, and there was a 47% decline in complaints. If you recall from this portion of the chapter, they're talking about a specific day of the year in which they had a lot of events happening, and rather than just staffing up the number of officers that they were using generally, they used their data to understand more specifically where the problems were likely to occur. And so by using fewer people in the right areas where they always had problems, they were able to more effectively handle, taking care of the public. So it sounds pretty common sense to say, hey, let's look at where there have been problems in the past and focus on those areas. But oftentimes technology, or used the right way, allows us to see where those problems really are going to be happening, rather than just going off of somebody's gut instincts on where the problems are. As we talk about business intelligence, we should keep in mind that this discussion includes software applications, technologies, and practices. So we're not just talking about the program itself, but it also involves how you're using the software. So you have to have people trained to use it in order to be properly using and doing business intelligence. This particular slide shows things on a number of different levels, so there's a lot of detail here. First thing I'd like to point out is the triangle. That on the bottom of this triangle is structured information, which, as you recall, is stuff that you would find in databases, stuff that's highly organized with proper rows and columns. And unstructured information at the top, this represents information like things that you might find in a newspaper clipping or on a business card, just random pieces of information that's not organized and collected well necessarily. And it's talking about how there are 3 different types of decision makers in an organization that might take advantage of business intelligence, of decision support systems that are supported by technology. On the lowest level, you have operational decision makers. So who are your operational decision makers? Well, these are people that are on the front line. For example, maybe it's somebody in customer service. And with the triangle in the background, this implies that operational decision makers are probably going to be pulling from very organized knowledge, maybe frequently asked questions databases, things like that, in order to solve people's problems. Going up, but you know, their focus is also important too, because they're usually focused on a one-to-one basis with customers. They don't, you know, an operational employee isn't going to have a broader level of responsibility. Whereas if you go up to the tactical level, people working in this area are your mid-level managers. These are people who are going to be looking potentially at the data that applies to an entire work group and making decisions about that work group. So perhaps if you're managing a small sales force or a small sales team, you don't necessarily want to just know the data of one individual person. You'd like to see all of that data aggregated. And you know, so perhaps you have many people working in a given market and you're analyzing a bunch of different markets simultaneously. You're able to use your business intelligence software and processes to determine, hey, there are some problems in this area of the, you know, where we're working compared to that area. Maybe we need to, you know, intervene in some way. And then at the highest level there, we have our strategic level decision makers, which access, you know, different types of data. These are your high level, C-level type executives who might look at something as random as, you know, an economic report from another country or maybe a political report. And they might be thinking about things like, should we build a factory in another country? And so they're not necessarily going to have the same type of information that somebody at the operational level does. Um, you know, it might be just a report that they sift through. It's not necessarily structured, but they still are using data in some form to help them make a decision that is going to affect potentially the whole company. So you can also think about each level's decision making scopes. You know, so strategic level decision makers make decisions that don't necessarily affect individual departments directly, but affect the entire company with their choices. Tactical level decision makers are concerned with things and decisions related to their departments, and operational level decision makers are oftentimes concerned with just individuals and interacting with them. So as you grow in your careers, you'll probably be working with a different form of business intelligence, but it all fits under the same concept.